Hello, and welcome to another episode of Generally Speaking. I'm your host, Bill Lawrence. Today is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. I like to preview that with the date so you know when you're watching it when this was done. I thought maybe it'd be good historically speaking. People want to go back in the old archives and look something up, listen when this was reported. This brings up an interesting point. I was just reading an article about books. Books are going away. Everything's becoming digital, and how we have to worry about digital now with AI making up stories that never happened. People are going to have to start wondering, how do we know what's the truth? And books, you don't have that issue. Books are not digitally manipulated at all. But there is, of course, the issue with books that it's whoever is writing them, it's their opinion. So you still have to check out books. But it was an interesting idea that books could just start disappearing altogether, and as much as, yes, they're still influenced by the writer, you still get this sense that there's a little more genuine authenticity there, and that's just going to be gone. Well, let's get on with what I originally wanted to do, which was report in items of interest, such as this country is being called an authoritarian state more and more. Let's look into an example of that. A woman in Florida, some town, she was critical of her mayor and his position on Israel, made a Facebook post about it. She didn't like his position. Well, a few days later, police showed up at her door asking her, what did you mean by those posts? What were your intentions? Why did you post that? Now, I didn't tell you what she said, what he said, but I think if you can guess properly, you already know that what she was saying was critical of Israel, because the Israel influence in this country is unbelievable. So if she would have said this mayor isn't strong enough for Israel, no police would have ever showed up at her door. So two things: we got an outrageous Israel influence in this country, and we have an authoritarian state where now you can't have free speech. You can't post that you disagree with the person. And it's interesting, this free speech thing, it's always a big argument. We already know you can't yell fire in the theater, but what other restrictions are there? Now they're getting to the point, now it's getting to the point where anything you say that the government doesn't like, they can just call a terrorist. They can say you were out to shoot someone, kill someone, doesn't matter. You say you didn't think you should put that much sugar in a cupcake recipe. You're a terrorist. They're going to come after you. It's terrible manipulations here. So let's get on to the next item. Sorry, I scrolled down my phone by mistake. There's an official draft, a government document draft was made during the Epstein incarceration, when he was still in jail, still alive. And it was describing how Epstein died a day before he died. Now, some people said, well, it was just a mistake. They put the date. They put the 9th instead of the 10th. But no, then it explicitly said Friday instead of Saturday. This raised a whole bunch of million questions. Why is there a document discussing he's dead when he wasn't yet dead? All right, let's go on to Trump extorting New York and New Jersey. They want to build a tunnel between them, and it's like a $16 billion project that's earmarked, approved, and yes, go ahead with it. And he said, you know what? No, you're not going to get this money unless you can get it if you're willing to change the name of Penn Station to Trump Station. Penn Station's a railroad station. And so he's extorting them, change the name or you can't get the $16 billion. This is our criminal and petty, in this case, president, holding up $16 billion worth of infrastructure projects so the Penn Station could be named after him. Well, it was taken to court, of course, and a judge ordered the funds to be released. But of course, in the judge world, in the jurisdictional world, things never happen. Okay, there it is, it's done. First of all, it takes weeks and months just to get to the point where someone can finally say something, and then when a judge does make a declaration, it gets appealed, and it's months and months before it finally gets resolved. And at any rate, in this case, the judge ordered the funds to be released, and of course the Trump administration is fighting that. All right, a federal judge in Oregon, he declares that the presumption of regularity no longer applies to the Department of Justice. What's this presumption of regularity? It kills me when people use fancy expressions, convoluted expressions, things that you could say in plain English, but they also always have to make it sound somehow intellectual or above us peons, legalese, presumption of regularity. Now that means that you're being honest, you're being fair, and you're talking the truth, and you're not playing games. And so the judge says, you can't trust this Department of Justice anymore. You can't say that what they're doing is for the reason they're doing it. They're just saying whatever they can to get what they want done. But they are lying about why they want to do it, and they're lying about the justifications. So the presumption of regularity no longer applies. In other words, we don't give deference. Well, if the Department of Justice is saying it, it must have a good point, and yes, we'll let them have whatever they want. If anybody couldn't recognize how there is no regularity in this Justice Department months ago, I don't know. I'm shocked. It finally took them, to realize it. At least one of them. All right, a Texas Attorney General candidate. He promises to try and revoke the citizenship of a state congressperson that he doesn't like. This is the kind of people the Republicans have running. What's my platform? I'm going to revoke the citizenship of someone who disagreed with my policies, with the policies that every American should have. That's my running platform. Authoritarian? Yep, there we go again. In the detention centers, these ICE detention centers, which are horrible places. This is horrible. First of all, they're putting up 24 or more now, and there's no care for humanity in there. It's all cold. There's no mattresses. The food is with bugs in them and moldy, and they've got children now. They grabbed up the people that they're going for while they're holding their children. Now you've got babies in detention centers with the parents, and no medical attention. You get medical attention when you're almost going to die, and sometimes not until you died, in which case the medical attention is just to write a report that you died. This is authoritarian. This is terrible. All right, Boston. Boston had some flags in front of a building, the state flag, the American flag, and they had a third flag, which they say, anybody can put up a flag. You get a week here or there for your flag. And so some Christian people put up a Christian flag, looks like the American flag, but where the stars usually are, they got a cross. Well, a Satanist group, they jump on every time they see an opportunity. We want to put up our Satanist flag. And this is what? This is just to test what you're all about and what you're really saying when you say anybody can put a flag. Because no, it's not anybody. The right away, the city government said, this anybody could put up a flag stuff. Well, we're stopping that. Nobody can put up a flag. And so, no, you Satanists, you can't put up a flag. Meanwhile, the Christians somehow managed to get their Christian flag up there. It wasn't for long. I think it was a day or a half a day or something, but it was up there, and the Satanists saw it. They said, whoa, what's going on here? You said nobody could have their flag, which, this is the prejudice again. This is the Christian prejudice we have. All right, you want to be Christian? Fine, okay. Just don't be evil about it. Don't start saying, we're better than you and you can't do it, but we can do it. That's where you start going down the wrong road. So they put a suit, the Satanists people put up a suit saying that what they did was wrong, and you got to pay for it. And so they probably will end up having to pay for it because the idiots, they don't see this writing on the walls. Maybe they don't read the news. Maybe they don't see, where this has happened, the same thing in all these other states, and they lost. All right, so New Hampshire Republicans, they want a constitutional amendment raising Christianity above all other religions. And now here we go again, more separation of church and state barriers broken down. New Hampshire's actually wants it in the Constitution that Christianity should be mentioned as something important and above all other religions. That they're considering permitting, allowing only teachers that are Christian in schools. This is the crazy Christians. I'm not saying they're all crazy, but there are crazies. There's crazies in every category. I'm just, generalizing, thinking that's probably the case. Crazies are everywhere. Well, there they are there. There's your listing of it. When they get into government, it becomes very bad. And I think we can all agree on that right now. So talking about some more crazy, we've got Trump lawyers. The Trump DOJ recently seized ballots and ballot machines and voter information from Fulton County in Georgia. Alleging that there was fraud in 2020, and they're still looking to go all the way back then. But is it really about that? No, because there's no presumption of regularity. These guys are looking to find information that they can use to knock people off the rolls, like Democrats in particular, so that Republicans, it's nefarious. They're up to no good. But what's interesting about this story is that the Trump lawyer, they had to get a court to sign off on it, and they had to present some justification. What did these Trump lawyers use? They used an episode of Law and Order and said, look, did you see what happened in that episode? Well, that could be the same thing here. If what happened, if their mistakes, the few mistakes that there weren't just typical administrative, accidental mistakes, but if they were intentional, this could be criminal activity. So the judge, who everyone is saying is generally speaking a fair and impartial judge, signed off on it. And I think part of the problem here is sometimes the Democrats try to be too fair and impartial when Republican judges are anything but. Just take Aileen Cannon, who slow walked, the Trump Mar-a-Lago documents case forever, and until Trump would get elected. And even then, at the end, she just said, after all the legal stuff and all the delays, you know what? I think this case is worthless because the prosecutor, Jack Smith, he's a special prosecutor, and that's not really a thing. So this whole thing, it doesn't really have any legs to walk on. Throwing it out. And meanwhile, special prosecutors have been used forever. So yeah, they're crooked. They're crooked. But the Democrats are trying to be open-minded and say, okay, maybe you have a case. Yeah, even though it's based on law and order, and even though it's, at the end, based on if something was done intentionally, not any hardcore proof of anything. And they let it go. So the Democrats, we get to be too soft. All right. James Comey and Letitia James, their cases were thrown out. The Department of Justice went after them because they don't like them. They don't go after people because they actually did anything. They go after them because they don't like them. They oppose what Trump did, so they're going to throw the Justice Department at him. So the case was thrown out. So what did Trump do? They tried opening up some old case that was already, lost, and somehow made some justification for, this should be brought up again. I call it a zombie resurrection route. This is what they're trying to do. They just won't stop. They'll go after people left and right. They're like, vicious dogs. All right. China is reducing U.S. Treasury holdings. Now, this is just a side comment. This is the economy, international economy. Just another reflection on U.S. in the world is the dollar is like the Titanic, slowly sinking. Now, unlike the Titanic, which it really everybody just completely died, I don't know how this is going to turn out with the economy. We keep hearing about the dollar is getting worse and worse. When will this impact us? I don't know. But that's what's happening. In New Jersey, a young lady won a House seat. She's going to Congress. Her name is Lilia Mejia. And she is like another Mamdani. She is vocal and out front about all the objectionable things this administration is doing, what ICE is doing, about the attempts to take over the election. She's all for things like daycare, universal daycare, and health care, universal health care. And so this is a good woman, Anna Lilia Mejia. She won a primary. Now, it doesn't mean she won the election yet because she still has to go up against the Republican in the general election. But if you think, what can I do? Try looking up Anna Lilia Mejia. Mejia is Mejia, and give her a donation. All right, from the Friendly Atheist. I love this guy. He was talking about South Carolina is now trying to follow Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma, trying to push the Ten Commandments in schools. And part of their justification, talking about Madison and how he was so strongly in favor of the Ten Commandments because it's the foundation foundations of American values and morals. And they cited exactly something he said, and meanwhile, he never said it. And that's the second time he's been cited about, what he said when he didn't say it. All right, in the UK, there's a big story going on about a protest group, Palestine Action. And, they've done some things like spray paint bombs, at companies that are selling bombs to Israel, saying, stop selling the bombs, stop selling the bombs. Well, UK called them a terrorist group and started arresting them. And there's like 1,200 people in this in jail now because of this. And not that they were even participants. These 1,200 people, these people who are in support of Palestine Action, and they sit and protest with a sign, "I support Palestine Action." Okay, that's it. You're a terrorist now. You become a terrorist. You're going to jail. So this is the degree that the thuggishness and authoritarianism is creeping into our governments, the UK and the US. Obviously it's in places like China, Russia, and Hungary with Orban, but it's coming to us now. It's not coming. It's here. It's here, right? Air flights to Cuba have been canceled because they don't have any fuel now. They can't refuel the jets. They're being strangled. They're being killed by the United States. That we've been trying to kill that country, for forever, for like 70 years now, if something around that time, restricting, travel, restricting goods coming in and out, telling other people, other countries, you can't deal with Cuba. And now, since they messed with Venezuela, Venezuela was a big supplier of oil to Cuba, and so is Mexico. That was their primary things. Now they've cut off Venezuela's oil supply, and they strong-armed Mexico into not giving oil to. So everyone there is going to be like one of those conditions where the hurricanes came and destroyed everything, and now you have no electricity, you have no hospitals, you can't go to schools, no buses are going anywhere because there's no gasoline, and this country is going after them. And it's mostly because of Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio, who is a Cuban expatriate and hates Cuba and wants to do anything he can to kill them. And now they're doing that. And who's going to suffer? It's always the people who suffer. All right, Kilmar Abrego. This guy was famous not too long ago about being sent to El Salvador when there was explicitly a judicial order not to send him, not allowed to send him out. And they sent him anyway. And then there was a big fight to get him back. And the government was saying, no, he can't come back. And if he comes back, we're going to charge him and send him away again. Well, now this just happened a second time. A young lady who was attending college, she got swooped up wrongly. It wasn't supposed to be her. It was someone else. And she got sent to Honduras. And it was, again, the same case like Abrego. There was a court order saying she cannot be deported anywhere. And they did it anyway. And the government admitted, oh, yeah, we made a mistake. We didn't mean to do that. And so justice was, the courts were saying, okay, well, she has to come back. And the government saying, no, we're not going to bring her back. No, it was a mistake, but no, we're not going to bring her back. So they're fighting that. This is what you call authoritarian. This is an evil government that we got going. All right, so Israel. Oh, Israel. It's always fun talking about Israel, right? They kill people with these bombs on a daily basis. And now they've started trying, let's see how these bombs work. These are heat bombs, things that blow up like a nova sun and essentially melt you. And there have been over 2,000 people that have been melted with these thermonuclear bombs, not nuclear, right? Thermogenic, how about that? And that they just melt you into little pieces. And it's, horrific. You say, oh my God, what are they doing? Really, come on. Is it any worse than being blown to pieces by your old regular bombs? No, not really, but it's all bad. It's all ugly. Israel is horrible. All right, the Trump admin says evidence against him, the Mar-a-Lago evidence, essentially not the evidence of him having tried to interfere with the 2020 election, which he did with fake electors. Fake, mind you, not real. And all the other efforts he was doing to try and interfere with the election. This was all put on hold once he became president, and he has a Department of Justice. That's all his lackeys doing whatever he wants. The information, the documents, they're still around. They're still sitting on the desk. just waiting till he gets out of office so we can prosecute him again. And he's saying, you know what, all this case has been, stopped. So this information isn't relevant to anything anymore. It should be destroyed. Destroyed, actually wiped out, make it gone so nobody can ever prove, what happened. Just destroy it. It's so nice when you're the president and you can just say, destroy any evidence of evil doing I've ever done or ever will do, and I can pardon myself for everything. What a nice position to have. All right, let's talk about something outside the news, just to break it up a little bit. Haagen Dazs, that popular yummy ice cream from Switzerland or one of those countries over there. It actually is not from Switzerland or someplace over there. It's from Bronx, New York. Yep, a couple started that company in Bronx, New York, and they came up with the name Haagen Dazs, so it would sound like something from Switzerland, where everything is healthy and wonderful and socially sourced and all that. Came up with the name Haagen Dazs. It isn't any family name. It isn't any person's name. It isn't a name that means anything, like, Happy Days or anything. They just made it up. That is like the best marketing idea I've ever heard of. All right, in Europe, there was a meeting of the political figures called the Munich Security Conference. Everybody gets together to talk about security, right? And one of the takeaways that some of my commenters, some of the people I watched were saying, was their big vilification of Russia. They couldn't say enough bad things about Russia. These people got Russia craziness on the brain. You're talking about Trump derangement syndrome. They've got Russia derangement syndrome. All right, so there you go. There's the report, and I hope you liked it. I hope you like, notify, and subscribe, and I hope you look for me again, and you all take care.